Hello, this is Xander, also known as that cat guy. You can also call me the Khajiit guy. I don't really care, but they're easier to say if you can't say Xander, which is a Chinese first name and a Japanese last name. It is a pen name, not my actual name, but you can call me that. I don't really care. I'm not going to give you my actual name because I'm not an idiot. Now, let's say, um, yeah, I don't think he broadcast published that chat I had with Trey Jadlow. I might mispronounce that. And this is not an attack on Trey Jadlow. This is just conversing on what his talking points are. I really just addressing that. Okay. I can't really find his actual talking point. But this is his. If you can see this on here, you can see this is his page, Trey Jadlow. You can probably go on there and watch his videos. I'm quite sure he goes over the same material, but he's basically asking you to read his listen to his argument on why he believes God exists, and he does so by the validation one has in oneself. Okay, at least he might disagree because he disagreed with me asking him what he meant by that in the argument we had, but that's basically what he's going with. And the problem with that is it's sophistry. Sophistry, if you don't know, is the style of argument that was like universally used in Greece, pretty much before Socrates. Okay, you might know the historian, the philosopher Pythagoras. Okay, who's known for the Pythagorean theorem. He's pretty much the father of mathematics. Okay, and one thing he said was that man was the measurement of all things. That in order for something to exist, it has to be a measure. It has to be something that man can can measure, man. Okay, and of course that's not really true. There are things that we can't really measure that we know does exist. All right, but the point is that the position he has follows a similar argument you will see from numerous different sophists from ancient Greece, and it's not really something that adds its own foundational argument to it that's independent of that. So it's sophistry. And the reason why I call it jargon is if you argue with him, he'll tell you that you have to follow his own course of dialogue to understand what he's talking about. You have to be familiar with his own terminology of words. That's jargon. Okay, let me see if I can get that on here. Okay, share screen. Yeah. Oh, okay, so that's what that does. Okay, let's go back to here. See if I can. Okay, that's interesting. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and move to jargon. This is the Wikipedia definition of jargon, but it's substantial enough. Jargon is a type of language that's used in a particular context and may not be well understood outside of it. The context is usually a particular occupation, that is a certain trade, profession, or academic field. But any in-group can have jargon. The main trait that distinguishes jargon from the rest of a language is special vocabulary, including some words specific to it, and often narrower senses of words that outside groups would tend to take in a broader sense. Jargon is thus the technical terminology or characteristic idiom of a specific activity or group. Most jargon is technical terminology, involves terms of art or industry terms with particular meaning within a specific industry. A main driving force in the creation of a technical jargon is precision and efficiency of communication when a discussion must easily range from the general themes to specific, finely differentiated details without circumlocution, circumlocution. A side effect of this is a higher threshold of comprehensibility, which is usually accepted as a trade-off, but is sometimes even used as a means of social exclusion, reinforcing in-groups out-group barriers. Okay, and one important other thing to note from George Orwell is that he believes in the modern style of language, deeming that good writing is clear and simple. In his essay, Politics of the English Language, he states the following arguments. Technical language, aka jargon, is nothing but an oratorical trick. A simple language is required to clarify difficult concepts, while complex language is needed to explain simple concepts. And lastly, political language is structured to make lies seem like the truth. In short, Orwell is articulating that specialized language is not essential. In other words, the language that you'll hear from Trey Jadlow, I hope I said that correctly. If not, you may correct me, Trey, is simply that. And of course, he's going to use jargon to as a foundation of his argument, because there's no way you're going to validate the existence of God, a metaphysical, an illusionary, mental, constructed thing, an imaginary thing. You're not going to be able to facilitate proper understanding of that, a proper fixed argument that can support it, unless you use some sort of trickery of words, because such does not exist. The reason why a God does not exist is due to the three following. Number one, we can explain the existence of the universe without a creator. In fact, we can even go so far as say nothing is actually created. No thing in our universe, from energy, molecules of matter, or submolecules of matter, like quarks, okay, space, time, nothing is created. Things can be disturbed and they can form. Like light, for instance, can be disrupted around gravity. I might have said something else in one of my other videos, but gravity can disrupt light. Of course, it can't actually disrupt the physical object from what it actually is. Okay, it can disrupt how you view that object, as for instance, light going around another object, light from a star going around another star, and as you see the star not really behind the other one. So, for instance, a very bright star could be behind a very bright super giant star. A blue supergiant star could be behind a red supergiant star. The red supergiant stars can be fainter than the blue star, but the light from the blue star will go around the red star in such a way as you'll be able to see it, even though the gravity is playing a trick on you as to where it's actually located. Galaxies are known for this. I think there's one example, I'm not going to present it, where the light from one galaxy actually goes around another, so it creates this sort of a unique illusion pertaining to the galaxy that's further away. Okay, going back to what I had said about why God doesn't exist, of course, as I've already stated, that things aren't really, nothing is created, it's formed. Molecules are formed. Everything is formed. Even energy is formed. Okay, nothing's really created. In fact, some have argued that matter is even more than a form that energy can take. Okay, there's arguments for that. I'm not going to present it, but you can probably find out just by looking through YouTube. Just make sure that you are able to browse correctly, or if not, visit a librarian and they'll teach you how to browse or catalog information for trying to find a book at the library. And I'm quite sure if you have a good enough skills of knowing how to find what you're trying to find, you could probably do the same thing on the internet. It's not much different. It's just you have a little more freedom of being able to search for something, because the catalog skills necessary to browse for a book at a library is much more there's much more skill involved, obviously, than trying to narrowly trying to browse for a particular video on YouTube or particular content through Google or whatever search engine you use. All right. Okay. Second reason why there is no God, okay, has to do with the fact that God's an ideal. Okay. How is God an ideal thing? Well, God's if you look at the hopefully you'll be able to see this. Okay. If you look up the definition of what is God, and it's funny because people like to still use the word even if the definition is invalid for it to be something that could exist. The same thing with race. Okay, race originally had a genetic meaning to it. When the genetic meaning was proved to be invalid, they simply invented a new definition for the word sociologically so it could still be used. Please invent a different word to use for something that you're trying to say. Don't try to use, for instance, if the word galaxy is wrong, please do not invent a new word. Please invent a new word for what you're trying to say, rather than use the old word with a new meaning to it so it can still be used. Okay? If the word is found to be invalid, please do not use it. Of course, galaxies are real, but the point is, if a word is wrong, don't continue to use it. Gosh. Okay. But, the definition of a God, or the concept of God by theologians, involves attributes of omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, omnivalence, divine simplicity, eternal, essential for existence. And in theism, God is the creator and sustainer of the universe. And of course, in deism, God is the creator, but not the sustainer. Okay. But nevertheless, the factor still remains that if there's no creator, then there's no God. Okay. If you remove God from being the creator, then you essentially redefine the word from what it actually is. Okay. And if any of these other factors, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, divine simplicity, and eternal, are proven to be wrong, then anything you talk about in place of God is also not God. Okay? God does not exist. All right? This is an ideal construct in one's brain. I believe one person had brought up, I believe he's one of the people who was on a Quiet Atheist's chat, who talked about God as nothing more than a mental disease. Okay? Of course, he says a lot of things that I say is wrong. Now I'll get to that, why he's actually the one wrong. All right. Okay. But nevertheless, that still goes with what I say. It's okay that if God's nothing more than something constructed in one's brain, that's still the same thing as a mental disease. And by that, a mental disease is something that your mind makes up that's not there. Like blood-sucking reptilians that live underground. That's the same thing. It's different because you don't have billions of people believing in blood-sucking underground reptile men or snake men or whatever. You don't have billions of people agreeing with David Icke or whatever his name is, the guy who talks about reptilians among us and refers to Queen Elizabeth II as an alien or whatever, which is absolutely preposterous. She's not an alien. She's just a descendant of a bastard who took over England and his descendants still rule it because the people of England are absolutely stupid. With, of course, a few exceptions, such as Sargon of Akkad, and people who know they can't overthrow the queen from being the ruler, or honestly believe that having a ruler who's a monarch is better than having a possible dictatorship in place of that. Okay, and of course, England does have a history of a dictatorship under under Oliver Cromwell and his son, briefly, Richard Cromwell, which it really wasn't ruled by him. He just was in place as the successor of Oliver, okay, who was a religious fanatic, a militant and a religious fanatic who wanted to storm out the Catholics and push Protestantism all across the lands of the British Isles, which is the reason why his tyranny is the reason why the British people of today don't like the idea of living under a republic, even though Ireland seems to be quite fine. I mean, Ireland has a republic. Ireland has a republic, the Republic of Ireland, and they're doing quite well. Okay, they were under the thumb of Oliver Cromwell, maybe not as strictly speaking, since Oliver Cromwell ruled his dominion and from London, and London is a bit of a distance away from Ireland. Okay, but Ireland was still ruled under the thumb of Oliver Cromwell, so they still have a history. It might not be the same history that the English have, but they still have a history under such tyranny. All right. Okay, now going back again, the two reasons why God doesn't exist. Of course, the universe was never created, it formed. Okay, this has been proven. The universe formed from the uncertainty principle with the development concerning frequency ranges that occur from spatial temporal foam that eventually was concentrated to the right extent to allow a universe to form. It's important to know that most of the universe's energy is in empty space, okay, which evidently means the overall energy in the universe is zero. So this expansion rate probably contributed from that is also zero or nearly zero. Okay, it's roughly zero. So given the fact there's no signature input or any actor to be present from that we can actually also go by, that is also evidence that no being was responsible for the creation of the universe, because the universe was never created. It formed, just like a child is formed. Okay, humans are formed and not created. That's one of the arguments you'll see from Trey, is that a person eventually has a sense of selfness. They're born. They're not born, they're formed. The birth part is simply simply the fetus leaving the mother. Okay, and which is then called a baby, even though there's no real difference 1 second before or 1 second after that birth. Okay. The registering effect of individuality occurs through a development of stages of development that occur as the youth develops into an adult. And you might say that you're truly born as you're 21 or 28 years old, probably more like 27 years old, when your prefrontal lobe is fully developed, because that's when you truly are an adult. or should be an adult. Not everyone develops in or fully develops their prefrontal lobe cortex. But once it's developed, that's when you can register things are a cost or a risk or could be potentially harmful. You have a sense of concern and caution for other things. Even though your understanding of what is death or what is life occurs much earlier, probably around the age of 6 or 7 or earlier. Could be earlier, but it's somewhere around that time frame where the youth is no longer could be considered a toddler and is now considered a young kid. It's generally around the time where you start going into you're registered and start attending elementary school. Okay, that's okay when you have an understanding of what's life and death, or can understand the difference. Okay, when you start going through that development stage of your brain, when your brain can start recognizing and registering that sort of element of reality. Okay, but even at that point of time, there's no sense of caution or concern that's really as evident that can be seen from an adult, that we can actually recognize as a true sense of individualism, a true sense of an individual. So I do have a problem speaking. I do have a bit of a problem with my voice, but that's one of the issues. Okay, with that that I have with Trey. That is unique use of and twist of words that don't really correlate well with trying to speak in an argument. Okay, the third factor, relevant to the other two, the third factor of why a God does not exist is because thing cannot exist in an essential world of differentiation and variation. Now, I had talked about with two older chaps. I believe they're older than me. Video conversation, which they said it was wrong, although they didn't start arguing against with each other. And that, who's actually right on that subject? Okay, purity cannot exist. Okay, I'm sorry, it does not. If you think it exists, you have something, you're not fully grasping what you're talking about. You need a little more research. More research, because you're not really understanding variation and other aspects. So, quantum physics, and so this certain variety of quantum physics, a certain study of quantum physics, a certain measurement that we found in quantum physics, or metaphysics, or whatever, is only cannot derive in any sort of variation or difference of itself. Well, you're going to be proven wrong. Okay, first of all, you go into something that's entirely hypothetical, not theoretical, hypothetical. The reason why I would say hypothetical is because you actually had to do test work to prove it's theoretical. If any test work has been done to prove it's theoretical, and I mean an actual test, okay, not a thought guess, okay, not a thought bubble, and then figuring it is true because that thought bubble is correct. No, that's generally how we form hypothesis. Okay, and generally we have two hypotheses together that correlate well. Usually you call that a theory. At least at least one professor from Old Dominion University would argue that way. He teaches political science, that correlating two hypotheses is generally what most people would consider to be a theory, which generally means it's still hypothetical. It just has two hypotheses that support it, two or more. Of course, I would argue that a true substantial theory, not a sub-theory, as I might call that, is one that is tested. Now, you would argue, well, that's a fact. No, a fact is something that has been tested to such a point that it has become evidently true and cannot be proven wrong. There are very few actual facts from science. Like, science is really bad at finding facts. It's good at finding theories and laws. A fact is defined through deduction, the philosophy of deduction, which you have two premises and a conclusion. Okay, that's how you establish a fact. So it's something that's confirmed to be true. Until it's confirmed to be true, it's not actually true. It's plausible. Okay? Rather than possible, it's plausible. Okay? You've already moved away from what's hypothetical to what's theoretical. Okay? So it's plausible. Trey's argument, of course, isn't even hypothetical. It's nonsensical. With all respect, Trey, like I said, you're a nice guy. You're a much better person than Redline is. I'm going to tell this to everyone very clearly. People from Florida have things wrong with them psychologically and chemistry related. You might argue otherwise, but no. What is it they drink in their tap water is something you really don't want in your tap water. I'm originally from Florida. I know what I'm talking about. Floridians have something wrong with them. Okay? It's the same thing with a lot of other people who really should think otherwise of their preconceptions. People who are nationalistically Chinese have the same thing wrong with them. People who are nationalistically Indian have the same thing wrong with them. People who are highly nationalistic are probably people who have been subjected to poisoning of lead and other chemicals in their tap water. Now, he might argue otherwise, but if he has a blood test, he might actually see that there. If Redline gets a blood test, he might actually see what's wrong with him. Trey and Redline know each other supposedly. Trey told me that Redline is not a theist, but he's probably just supporting him because the fact that Redline was able to allow him to talk. Given what Redline said that Trey said about Redline being a good moderator, no, Redline cannot moderate. Okay, moderate means he can control himself. My own video proves he cannot control himself. This guy is someone who has what a quite atheist says, a lot of passion, is someone who cannot control themselves. Okay, this guy can't moderate. All right, maybe he got an atheist upset to leave, and that helps you, Trey, bring your point across. But he cannot moderate. This is a person who probably doesn't have an actual job, or if he does, it's a very low-paid, blue-collar job, or if otherwise he's a rich guy, upper middle-class person, or upper middle-class person, who's living off the fact that he's wealthy, or living off the fact that he has connections. This is, of course, true for someone living in the South. Okay, you might not know this, but as someone with knowledge of political science, as I do, there are three primary political cultures in the United States. You have traditionalism in the South, Florida, part of that South. You have individualism as the Mid-Atlantic, which is, of course, New York and New Jersey, and it's starting to be noticed in Virginia. And then you have moralism in the Northeast. Now, of course, there's outliers. There's some individualism in parts of the New England, parts of the strict Northeast, which is Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, and there's some bits of moralism that could be found in the Mid-Atlantic. There's some traditionalism that's found in the Mid-Atlantic, and there's some traditionalism. There's some individualism that's found in the South. But the most evident political culture in the South is traditionalism. Now, what is traditionalism? Okay. All right. It's not going to be found here, so I'm going back to Google. Traditionalism. Okay, political traditionalism. Let's put traditionalism, individualism, and moralism. Okay, let's see if we can get it from here. Digital Commons ID tag. Okay. Okay. Traditional. Okay, I need to look up definition. I'm trying to get you to see. There we go. Here we go. Illustrative street political cultures. Okay, and as you can see, we have moral culture being more evident here in the northern prairie states. Okay, individualistic culture is, of course, most noticeable in this region. Okay, here we go. Traditionalism. This is what I want to talk about. Okay, traditionalism. Of course, they list Virginia as a traditionalist, part of the traditionalism. Not really. There's parts of it that are, but it's because they evident that the fact they voted for Obama, they're actually more kind of in the middle between traditionalism and individualism. Okay, in the North, it's much more individualistic. It's much more like Maryland. Okay. Traditional political culture. Social and family ties are prominent where this type of political culture is found. This often means that some families run the government and others have little say about it. This reflects an older attitude that embraces a hierarchical society, in other words, a feudal society, as part of the natural order of things. This is why Democrats have such a hard time winning the South unless they're Democrats who are actually conservative running for office. Government is seen as an actor with a positive role in the community, but which is similar to moralism. But the role is largely limited to securing the maintenance of the existing social order. In other words, conservative. Political leaders play a larger conservative and custodial role than being innovative. Otherwise, limited government is viewed as best because that is all that is required to meet the needs of those in power. The South is the regional focus for this type of culture. While undergoing change, traditional Southern politics have been dominated by backdoor arrangements and strict class divisions. Okay, that's the type of culture that you're going to see from Redline. All right, that's where he's from. All right, and those who defend him are probably part of the same political culture or have some trace of it, because as it's noted from traditionalism, it's primarily about securing the maintenance of the existing social order. That means if Redline's the guy in charge, then his potsies, his gang, are going to defend him, even if they're not as morally bankrupt as he is. All right. And I'm sorry, that's going to be probably the last time I'll talk about him. All right. But needless to say, when it comes to Trey's argument about God existing, of course, is the fact that purity and different sources of a world of differences and purity cannot coexist. Okay, I'll give you an example. Say I had a pure vial of H2O and I mixed that with salt water. What do I get? I get salt water that's diluted. What if I mix anything that's pure with anything that's not pure? Well, I get any sort of trace chemicals or contamination that prevents what was pure from being pure. The answer is yes. Any chemist will tell you, yes, it's going to be contaminated. Well, in fact, the vial of H2O that I said was pure really wouldn't be pure either, anyways. because what we determine as pure in science is really just something at such a low fraction of contamination that whatever there is just so minuscule that it doesn't really have much of an effect on our conduct of science, on our what we're trying to do in a laboratory environment. Okay, that's what they mean by pure in scientific terms. It's not really pure in the definitive terms. All right, it's just subjectively pure, which shows you what purity is. It's again referring to my second factor why God doesn't exist. Ideal. It's something that just exists in your brain. It doesn't exist in reality. Same thing with the concept of oneself. That exists in your brain. You're not really one thing. You're a multitude of distinct organisms that known as cells, your cells, that function together as a single host. You're not really one thing. You're billions of things, billions of cells that work together. Okay. Might recognize itself as one thing, but you're not. You are, of course, legally defined as one thing, as a person, as a voter, if you can vote or are registered to vote, and as a civilian and citizen. But you're not really one thing. You're billions of things. And not just, of course, the cells that make up your physical body. The bacteria in your system that's helpful for digestion, that's also part of you in the sense that it depends on you to the point, and you depend on it to the point of having a symbiotic relationship. That's, of course, talking about the good bacteria in your system, not the bad bacteria that gives you gas. But that leads, of course, to my 3 pointers that I wanted to talk about when it comes to Trey's argument of why God doesn't exist, and why his argument supporting God is really just baseless, because it's just about jargon and sophistry. Okay, he uses jargon in his own argument, and it's bounded by sophistry. And of course, someone like Redline will agree to something like that. Anyone who values the world by himself, so anyone who's a narcissist or an egotist, is going to agree with sophistry. Okay, I mean, let me show you some arguments that are from sophistry. Okay. Okay. All right, you got a list of sophists here. You have Protagoras. Okay. Was a pre-Socratic Greek philosopher and is numbered as one of the sophists by Plato. In his dialogue, Protagoras, Plato credits him with having created the role of the professional sophist. He also is believed to have created a major controversy during ancient times through his statement that man is the measure of all things. Okay, I was wrong, but that's not Pythagoras, it's Protagoras. Okay. Protagoras says that man is the measure of all things, interpreted by Plato to mean that there is no absolute truth, but that which individuals deem to be true, to be the truth. That means subjective truth is true, not objective truth. Although there is reason to question the extent of the interpretation of his arguments that as follows. The concept of individual relativity was revolutionary for the time, and contrasted with other philosophical doctrines that claimed the universe was based on something objective, outside of human influence or perceptions. And of course, as noted, Trey's argument is entirely based on human perception and influence. So it's entirely based on the argument from Protagoras. And of course, Redline is someone who would agree in these terms, not with me, but with sophists in their arguments, because he's one of them. Well, he's not a professional sophist like an ancient Greek person like Gorgias here. But here's what Gorgias would say. He's from Sicily, okay, which means he's part of what do they call that part of Greece? Let's see if I can find that. Yeah, Magna Graecia, which is there's Sicily right here. So he's from here. No, that's Gorgias, of course, the sophist. Okay, like other sophists, he was an itinerant, practicing in various cities and giving public exhibitions of his skill at the great Pan-Hellenic centers of Olympia and Delphi, and charged fees for his instruction and performance. He was a nihilist. A nihilist is a philosophical doctrine that suggests the negation of one or more reputable, meaningful aspects of life. Okay. And of course, Gorgias is perhaps the first to be considered a nihilist. Okay. His chief claim to recognition resides in the fact that he transplanted rhetoric from his native Sicily to Attica and contributed to the diffusion of the Attic dialect as the language of the literary prose. Gorgias ushered in rhetorical innovations involving structure and ornamentation and the introduction of paradoxologia, the idea that paradoxical thought and paradoxical expression. For these advancements, Gorgias has been labeled the father of sophistry. Gorgias is also known for contributing the diffusion of the Attic. I already talked about that. Gorgias was the first orator to develop and teach a distinctive style of speaking. This is probably the same speaking you're going to see from Redline and what you're going to see from Trey to a point. Gorgias' extant rhetorical works, the Encomium of Helen, on non-essential and epitaphils come to us via a work entitled Technai, a manual of rhetorical instruction which may have consisted of models to be memorized and demonstrate various principles. I gotta clean my glasses. Here we go. Demonstrate various principles of rhetorical practice. Although some scholars claim that each work represents opposing statements, the four texts can be read as interrelated contributions to the up and coming theory of art and of rhetoric. In other words, they're kind of similar to the Bible, the four Gospels. Of Gorgias' surviving works, only the Encomium and the defense are believed to exist in their entirety. Meanwhile, there are his speeches, rhetorical, political, and other. A number of these are referred to and quoted by Aristotle, including a speech of Hellenic unity, a funeral oration for Athenians fallen in war, and a brief quotation from an encomium on the aliens. Part of the speeches. These are paraphrases of the treatise on the nature of the non-existent. These works are each part of the Diaz Kant's collection, and although academics consider this source reliable, many of the works included are fragmentary and corrupt. Questions have also been raised as the authenticity and accuracy of texts attributed by Gorgias. Gorgias' writings are both rhetorical and performative. He goes to great lengths to exhibit his ability of making an absurd argumentative position appear stronger. Consequently, each of his works defend positions that are unpopular, paradoxical, and even absurd. The performative nature of Gorgias' writings is exemplified by the way that he playfully approaches each argument with stylistic devices such as parody, which you'll hear from Redline, his belief that the intellectual humors, well, that's sophistry, boy. Artificial figuration and theatricality. Gorgias' style of argumentation can be described as poetics minus the meter. Gorgias argues that persuasive words have power, that is, equivalent to that of the gods or as strong as physical force. In the encomium, Gorgias likens the effect of speech on the soul to the effect of drugs on the body. Just as different drugs draw forth different humors from the body, some put in a stop to disease, others to life, so too with words. Some cause pain, others joy, some strike fear, others steer the audience to boldness. Some benumb and bewitch the soul with evil persuasion. Gorgias also believed that his magical incantations would bring healing to the human psyche by controlling powerful emotions. He paid particular attention to the sounds of words, which, like poetry, could captivate audiences. His florid rhyming style seemed to hypnotize his audience. Gorgias, which is kind of similar to the power you see from certain people who either speak as a reverend or an orator for religion, or people who seem to have this sort of persuasive control with their ability to outright criticize people in the most provocative ways. And you know who I'm talking about, don't you, Redline? Unlike other sophists, such as Protagoras, Gorgias did not profess to teach irate, excellence, or virtue. He believed that there was no absolute form of irate, but that it was relevant to each situation. For example, virtue in a slave that was not virtue in a statesman. His thought was that rhetoric, the art of persuasion, was the king of all sciences. Guess who also thought rhetoric is such a good thing? Redline. Since it was capable of persuading any course of action. While rhetoric existed in the curriculum of every sophist, Gorgias placed more prominence upon it than any of the others. Now, I have to apologize for bringing up Redline when I was supposed to bring about Trey, but anyone who professes himself like Gorgias is someone who is, I am someone who really doesn't like sophistry. And when I encounter a sophist, either Trey or Redline, I'm bounded to speak my mind about it. That doesn't mean I'm right, of course. What does is whether the words that come out are actually based on fact. And of course, you're going to have, if Redline counters my statement, which he probably will, because the guy has no life and no actual friends, just people who somehow he has controlled, which is weird because he's a kid and he has people in their 40s and 50s who speak on his behalf. There's something wrong there. I'm sorry. A kid shouldn't have people in their 40s and 50s talking on for his behalf unless he's some sort of prophesized intellectual, some sort of esteemed genius who's valued highly by the entire intellectual community. And I'm sorry, I've never heard about a guy, anyone from Florida having that talked about them on the news. Okay, and there's no news article bringing up some new, no, don't really know the word, but esteemed intellectual would probably be a good good synonym for it. That everyone's now trying to defend. Okay, he's not a good person. Okay, he's a sophist. He's very much like Gorgias. Okay, he really is not a particularly good person. He's not a particular person I would like to be friends with. I don't understand what other people would. Okay, if you guys, okay, anyone out there who follows him or chats with him, please spend the time knowing sophistry. Please understand why it's wrong and why it's evil or why it corrupts knowledge. Please do so. And please do not defend him or entice him. Okay, he's a kid. Okay, I know he's not a little kid, but he's still a kid. All right, he's still young, a youth. All right, if you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, please have a little more common sense and decency as to teach him about sophistry or teach yourself about sophistry, know what it is, and then moderate him to the best of your ability so he doesn't speak out and try to control people like he's been doing. Okay? This is not a good guy. He's not a good guy. Okay? And I'm going to finish off right there talking about him. The guy has problems. He's clearly hyperactive. He drives me nuts with the way he talks. His voice hurts my ears. It's sickening how he converses. Just, I feel like nauseous just thinking about it. That's why I don't watch most of his videos. Okay, his voice hurts my ears. Okay, he has a really, really harsh voice. I wish the guy who has a much slower voice would try to help him speak a little differently. You know, if he could lower his voice, he might be more tolerable. So the guy who I said speaks like Duke Nukem, since you're friends with him, can you help him out and get him to speak lower like you do, since you have a much better voice than he does? In fact, the guy with the red flag with the hemp on it, you have a very nice speaking voice. You could, even though you're much older, and he would have to be older like you, that speak like you do. Okay, could you at least help him out to help him speak in a much lower voice, because it really hurts one's ears. I mean, I hurt your ears because maybe you're used to it, but it hurts my ears. Okay, it's like hearing someone scratch on a chalkboard. It's what his voice sounds like. It is painful. Okay, not just his attitude and his behavior and his demeanor and the way he addresses himself and his sophistry and his rhetoric, okay, and everything else about him, as well as his lack of intelligence, but his own voice, which I might even argue is the worst of all, is his voice. Okay, but needless to say, if he brings me up at all I have to say is the guy has problems. He controls people. It clearly does, because they're generally not as bad as he is, and is somehow following him for some weird reason. Something similar to how Jim Jones was able to convert people to his ideology and then got them to drink Kool-Aid when he realized he was going to no longer be a leader. And I try to get this guy to portray himself negatively amongst his own friends or followers, to the point that they're going to see him for who he really was. Yeah. Because the thing is, if you are seeing a bully from an observant, you're probably not going to get the guy to stop bullying. Okay, you're not going to see the person in a negative light. You're going to say, "Oh, that guy just got a lot of passion. He's got a lot of strength. Yeah, he's just a really cool guy. Yeah, until you're bullied by him. Then you see him as a jerk. Now you see him as a jerk, you reflect upon him negatively as well. All right. So, yeah, a lot of you guys probably aren't saying things that he's going to attack you for, or maybe because he knows you're following him that he's not going to attack you because he needs followers, because he's a sophist and he's a narcissist, which usually comes with being a sophist. But yeah. But yeah, okay, that's if he brings up any sort of chatter, he's just gonna highlight more that there's something wrong with him. Okay. And if anyone agrees with him, there's something wrong with them too. Okay. And of course, you go, there's something wrong with me. Well, there are things wrong with me. I have a slight ADD problem. I don't have OCD, but I may have a very small, insignificant amount of OCD. The medical professional who evaluated me did not found any OCD. It just says that I have a likelihood to suffer from trauma, and I have ADD. So I'm someone who can more easily suffer from trauma than most people can. And of course, trauma is not a good thing. And of course, I have suffered from trauma or traumatized by Redline. Of course, you say, oh, there's nothing I do wrong. There's nothing I do wrong. Yeah, there is. Shut up. Thank you. Okay, now as for the guy with some manners, Trey, the guy who has some sense of civility, now he's going to argue his civility comes prominently with the fact that he's a good Christian. But maybe so. I'm not going to say anything wrong about him like I did with Redline. Okay. But that's the last time I'm going to talk about Redline. Definitively. Okay. Trey is a much better person. I respect him for that. I respect for him to be a positivist. You know, even with anyone who isn't highly negative, he will say he'll refer to the best characteristics of them. Now, I've noticed the same thing from a quite atheist is very similar to that. He's also appears to be a positivist. There's nothing wrong with being a positivist. More people should be positivist, in my opinion, because the more positivists there are, the more people can tolerate and be able to socialize with one another. Less racism, less hatred there will be in our society. That's what's good about being a positivist. Now, there's negatives, of course, being a positivist. One is you're not going to catch a person who's a potential psychopath or a person who's could be potentially bad, really bad, by always thinking the positive about most people. There's that one episode from King of the Hill, where Peggy assumes the most positive things about her neighbor and friend, the blonde woman, who was cheating on her husband Dale with John Redcorn. Nancy Grebel, who was cheating on her husband Dale with John Redcorn, and Peggy didn't knew about it because she always thinks the most positive things about other people, or at least that's what the episode portrays her as, until her husband Hank reveals to her that the son of the supposed son of Dale and Nancy was in fact the son of John Redcorn and Nancy. Okay, like I said, there are negatives with positivism, but there are good things with positivism. Okay. I think I would like to end it with there because I just want to go over some bits, and I hope people who would watch this spend some time to know what sophism is. Okay, SOPHISM, sophism. Okay, please know what that is. Please know each of the particular sophist, and please avoid using it at all. Okay, please do not be a sophist. Okay. I know a lot of people want to be sophistic, but please do not be a sophist. Okay, don't use fallacious arguments, especially with the intention of deceiving. All right? Okay. Such as we get last time with Trey making an argument to support God by using jargon. All right. And that concludes what I wanted to say. Maybe I'll have another discussion about this, maybe not. And I know this is particularly weird that someone would actually have a group discussion with just himself. Yeah, what a nut am I? But yeah, I don't really have any friends. I mean, I'd like to be friends with Sargon. I try to be friends with Sargon. If you're there, Sargon, let me know when you're going to accept any of my comments or conversation messages with you, because you seem to don't want to socialize with me at all. And I know I like you because you're a history nut too. So I thought that maybe we could converse together, because I have a substantial amount of education in regards to history. One of my majors is in history, so I thought that maybe we could converse together on the subject, or at least about the evils of feminism. Even though I just noted that I have actually witnessed someone with what could be called white male privilege. It's not you though, I mean, but it's one of the problems with living with people who are in Florida. Okay, like, see, here's what thing people don't realize. Okay, and they get that bad idea or view or perceptions of people from Florida because they've never been there. And I've been there because I'm from there. Well, originally, and before I lived in Virginia, and I've been in Virginia for about over 28 years. Okay, or close to that, about 28 years lived in Virginia. Okay, what you need to know about people in Florida is this. Okay, you keep your mouth shut when you're in Florida, because almost every person there might try to kill you. It's that bad in Florida. Okay, the people there, especially the white people there, somewhat with the black people that live in there, are really, really, really aggressive and psychotic. Okay, almost everyone there is a psychopath. It's the state of psychopaths. I think that, I'm not sure if they have the highest count of psychopaths in some sort of censored record, but there's probably a good amount of them that come from there, because it is the worst place to be. If you want to avoid psychopaths, it's the worst place to be is anywhere in Florida. Okay, it's really bad. Okay. There might be some good people there, but there's a lot of people that are just pure scum. Okay, it's just really bad. Okay, it might be something in drinking water. I think it is, because it's the same thing you might have noticed from jihadists and Chinese nationalists and Indian nationalists, because they're just as bad as jihadists. Okay, it's something in the drinking water that might have been tasted by pregnant women, and then creating defects in the child that's born and develops, continually drinking the same water. It doesn't even have to be the tap water. It could be any water that's facilitated out of Florida. Okay, there is something wrong with that state. The water there is probably more polluted than the water from Mexico. Okay, probably worse for you. All right. It might not be immediately as bad, but long-term wise, it's probably worse. It's probably so much nickel and lead, and you're probably, if they have nuclear power plants, don't be surprised there's radioactive chemicals in that water that's of high level or frequency. There's a lot of things wrong with Florida. Stay away from that state. Let it get flooded. Hopefully the flood will the flood will dilute the nuclear contaminants or whatever that's in the water that's making the people who live there so erratic and weird. Okay, not only do people from Florida look weird and sound weird, like scratching chalkboard, but they are weird. And some people somehow, like people who are interested in Dadaism or strange art, somehow have an attraction to these people. Stay away from them. They're sick. They're disgusting. Stay away from them. Okay? You go to an art gallery or something. Do something in your life. Stay away from these people. Okay? And most of all, if you live in Florida, you have to, be quiet about whatever you want to talk about, because if you say anything at all, you're going to get yourself smacked. You can get yourself killed. Okay? You can get shot for anything in Florida. Okay? Why do you think they have that law? Okay? Where you could be shot for any particular reason, and especially if you're white or half white. Okay? Why do you think that is? Okay? And not just the white people are bad. Anyone who comes there is going to be notoriously bad. One time I went there one time to visit there because I have relatives there. But I logged at this one house that was used in this one movie. Forgot the movie though, but it's the one where this one actor was in it. He was really young. Before he was in Home Alone, or when he was or after he was in Home Alone. There's I forgot his name, but I actually had stayed in that house. And of course, I made a complaint because I had some itching on me because the sheets weren't particularly clean. Well, a little bit of gossip went out about this. The fact that I made a complaint that because it was used as the house was being used as an inn, and so I made a complaint, and it was of course being owned by a guy from Britain and his wife. Okay, and they were owning this inn. And I stayed there, and I complained that the sheets weren't perfectly clean, and they weren't because there was dirt and dust, and there were clearly little black spots. Okay, and so I made a complaint, and after eating out at the lodge, the dining place or eatery place there, I got sick. I got food poisoned. So just to put notes there, and I did get food poisoning there. I got really sick and vomited several days, vomiting and diarrhea, okay, from food poisoning. All right. So, and of course, this might not be irrelevant, but it might just be because sometimes you go out to place, you're going to get food poisoning because people don't wash their hands. But, of course, that depends on the degree of food poisoning, of course, because some people just come home with a bellyache. Some people come home and they're just vomiting and diarrhea and for like 2 weeks, just really bad food poisoning. And, of course, that could still be irrelevant. But as I know from what I know about Florida, the people there are psychopaths. Okay, this entire state, pretty much most of the state is just overrun by psychopaths. You got people there who aren't, probably are elderly or something else. People here who are from another country or whatever. But the guy who's from Britain who owns that hotel, inn. The movie, like I said, has that actor from Home Alone 1 and 2. Let's see if I can find it if I know him. All right, so the actor in there is Macaulay Culkin, and it should show you because he was an actor in there. My Girl, that's it. That's the movie, My Girl. And this was in the was filmed where the house it was filmed in was in the same place that I stayed at, which was in Florida. Yeah, Dan Aykroyd was in there, I think. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, stay away from Florida. It's not a good place to be. If you go there, you might not be able to come back. So stay away from that state and stay away from sophistry. Okay.